Number 15. Anna Rustin Help Me Note. 13 years of captivity, abuse, and unimaginable horror culminated in two desperate words: help me. Anna Rustin scribbled them on a piece of paper and clutched the paper tightly, her heart pounding. She was determined. Today would be different. Today, she would be free. Anna had been kidnapped just days after her 15th birthday. Her captor, known only as Malik, had lured her to his home with deceptive kindness, only to trap her in a nightmare that stretched on for over a decade. She endured beatings, abuse, and the heartbreaking loss of the children she bore him, who were sold off to unknown fates. Escape seemed impossible until a plan was hatched during a health worker's routine visit. It took years for Anna to muster the courage to plan her escape. Malik was meticulous, rarely leaving her alone and always watching. But Anna noticed a pattern. During the Islamic festival of Eid, the family would be deeply engaged in prayers, distracted enough to give her an opening to freedom. She carefully included this crucial date in her note. When the health worker arrived, Anna's heart raced. The woman moved about the house, her eyes occasionally meeting Anna's with a look of concern. Anna subtly dropped the note on the floor. The health worker glanced down. Seemingly understanding the importance of the communication, she stepped on the note, then bent down to retrieve it, all the while maintaining a casual demeanor. Handing Anna a form to sign, the health worker discreetly wrote a message on the back: "I will ring the house phone 3 times when I'm outside." The plan was risky, with so many things that could go wrong, but Anna clung to it like a lifeline. The day of Eid arrived. The household buzzed with activity. Malik and his family preoccupied with prayers. Just as they'd planned, the phone rang 3 times, and Anna felt a surge of adrenaline. She asked to go to the toilet, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Malik allowed it. Anna's plan had been to try the back door, but as she approached the front, she noticed the key had been left in the lock. It was an incredible stroke of luck. With trembling hands, she turned the key and slipped out into the night. Her rescuer was waiting. Together, they hurried to the car, and once inside, the health worker alerted the police. Malik, already aware of Anna's escape, called in a frenzy, claiming his wife had run away due to severe mental illness. His lies, however, did not hold any weight against Anna's truth. The authorities were initially skeptical, but Anna's story eventually dissolved their doubts. The evidence of her years of abuse was undeniable. The scars she bore said it all. Despite this, the trauma left her too terrified to press charges. Malik's presence still cast a dark cloud over her newfound freedom. Now 44 and free for 16 years, Anna lives with the memories of her captivity. She has never felt strong enough to face Malik in court, the thought of reliving her nightmare too unbearable. Yet she draws strength from the small victories, the courage it took to write that note, the daring escape, and the support of the health worker who saved her life. Number 14. Teen sends Snapchat. The night was a blur of fear and confusion as a 14-year-old girl tried to piece together her surroundings. She could barely recall how she had ended up in the car. Drugged and disoriented, the faces of the 3 men who had taken her swam in and out of focus. Earlier that day, she had encountered one of the men in the car with her in Capitola in Northern California. Now she was miles away, the familiar landscape replaced by the unfamiliar. Though her memory wasn't clear, she knew one thing: she needed to get help. To her luck, the suspects hadn't stolen her phone from her. She opened Snapchat, the app she used to stay connected with her friends. She typed out a message, hoping someone would see it in time. "Somebody help me. I'm in a random man's car. I am not in Santa Cruz. Where am I?" she wrote. Snapchat's location sharing feature turned out to be a lifesaver. Though she was barely coherent, she knew her friends could see where she was if she left the app open on her phone. In a few hours, the location would expire, but she prayed it would be enough. She needed it to be. Back in Santa Cruz, her friends were hanging out when they saw her message. Their initial confusion quickly turned to alarm. They checked the map on Snapchat, which pinpointed her location with remarkable accuracy. Within moments, they could see she was somewhere off the beaten path, far from where she should have been. One friend dialed 911 and explained the situation to the dispatcher in San Jose. Officers acted swiftly, using the precise location provided by the app. Soon, they'd arrived and swarmed the vehicle, pulling the girl to safety and arresting Albert Thomas Vasquez. The other two men, Heriberto Gonzalez Aravanga and Antonio Quirino Salvador, were also later arrested on charges of kidnapping and conspiracy. The young girl's life was saved, thanks to the silent broadcast of her location via Snapchat. Number 13. Cheryl Treadway and the Pizza Order. As seasoned chef Alonia Hawk prepared for the evening rush at Avon Park Pizza Hut, the restaurant buzzed with activity. Store manager Candy Hamilton, a 28-year-old veteran of the establishment, oversaw the operations from behind the counter, her eyes scanning the orders as they printed out. Suddenly, an unusual note caught Hawk's attention. It was a pizza order from a regular customer, Cheryl Treadway. But what stood out was the desperate plea scribbled in the comments section. "Please help. Get 911 to me." Further down, it read, "911 hostage help." Hawk's heart raced as she showed Hamilton the slip of paper. They'd never seen anything like it. They were scared for this person. Hamilton immediately called 911, relaying the ominous secret message to the dispatcher. Across town, Cheryl Treadway sat anxiously with her 3 children and her boyfriend, Ethan Nickerson, who had been holding them hostage all day. Their arguments had escalated, and in a fit of rage, Nickerson had seized Treadway's phone. Hours had passed in a tense standoff, with Nickerson wielding a knife and pacing the room, his mind clouded by narcotics. In a moment of quick thinking, Treadway convinced Nickerson to let her order pizza for the children. She had managed to retrieve her phone under the guise of placing the order, seizing the opportunity to send a covert plea for help. Lieutenant and police hostage negotiator Curtis Ludden was the first to arrive at the scene. As he approached the house, Treadway burst out, clutching one of her children, her eyes wide in terror. She told them 2 more children were in there with Nickerson, and he was armed with a knife. Ludden assessed the situation. His training kicked in as he worked to de-escalate. While inside the house, Nickerson's paranoia grew. He gripped the knife tightly. The police presence outside had not gone unnoticed. Through the window, he could see officers positioning themselves, ready to act. Outside, Lieutenant Ludden kept his voice calm and steady as he negotiated with Nickerson. Patiently, he coaxed the agitated man, convincing him that they could talk through this and no one would get hurt. His voice carried the weight of authority and compassion. In a pivotal moment, Nickerson's resolve faltered. The tension in his shoulders eased as Ludden's words reached him. Slowly, he put down the knife and walked out of the house, his hands raised in surrender. The police moved swiftly, ensuring the remaining children were safe and unharmed. Nickerson was arrested and faced charges of aggravated assault with a weapon without intent to kill, battery, false imprisonment, and obstruction of justice. Cheryl Treadway's quick thinking had averted a potential tragedy. Back at the Pizza Hut, the employees watched the news coverage with a mix of relief and disbelief. They'd never seen anything like it. The unusual pizza order had not only saved lives, but also highlighted the importance of vigilance and quick thinking in moments of crisis. Number 12. Elizabeth Shoaf's text. Kidnapped on her way from school on a September day in 2006, 14-year-old Elizabeth Shoaf was being marched through the dense woods by her captor, Vincent Filia. He kept a tight grip on her arm, steering her away from familiar paths. Disoriented and terrified, Elizabeth's heart pounded as she struggled to keep her bearings. Filia stopped when they reached a secluded hillside, pulling aside a plywood cover to reveal a deep, dark hole. With a chilling calmness, he ordered her to climb down. The bunker was a small, claustrophobic space, 15 feet deep and hidden well from any casual observer. It was lined with crude shelves made from cut branches and canvas, a camp stove flickering dimly in one corner. There was even a hand-dug privy, a disturbing hint at the prolonged captivity Filia had planned for the teenager. Days quickly began to blur together as Elizabeth sat in the dark, her only illumination the dim light from the camp stove. Her captor, who told her he was a police officer, threatened her with handmade grenades and a flare gun, ensuring her compliance. Elizabeth tactically gained his trust, pretending that she liked him. In doing so, he started to give her privileges, allowing her to go outside and even play on his phone. Her thoughts constantly drifted to her family, wondering if they were searching for her, hoping they hadn't given up. One evening, as Filia dozed off, Elizabeth noticed his cell phone had been carelessly left within reach. Her pulse quickened. Carefully, she edged closer and picked up the phone. She typed a quick message to her mother, her fingers flying over the keys. "Hi, Mom. I'm in a hole across from Charm Hill where the big trucks go in and out. There's a bomb. Call police." The message sent, and Elizabeth's heart pounded as she placed the phone back and waited, every sound magnified in the silence of the bunker. Back home, Elizabeth's mother felt a jolt of disbelief when she received the text message. She immediately contacted the authorities, who sprang into action. Kershaw County Sheriff Mike McCaskill quickly mobilized his team, using cell tower data to triangulate the location of the phone. It was a race against time, and the woods were vast. Throughout the night, deputies combed through the forest, their flashlights piercing the darkness. As dawn approached, a breakthrough came. One of the searchers heard a faint cry. The deputy shouted, drawing the team's attention to a seemingly undisturbed hillside. As they approached, they saw a young girl standing at the mouth of a concealed bunker, the plywood cover partially lifted. She was unharmed but visibly shaken. Sheriff's Captain David Tomley cautiously approached her, calling her name softly. She nodded, eyes wide with relief and fear. She wasn't tied up and appeared coherent, but the threat of booby traps loomed. Tomley instructed her to step back so they could check. Elizabeth complied, and soon the team found and disarmed a crude but dangerous booby trap Filia had set up to protect his hideout. Elizabeth was swiftly taken to Kershaw County Medical Center for evaluation. Her family, overcome with relief, rushed to her side. Meanwhile, the search for Vincent Filia intensified. The authorities, now equipped with the crucial details provided by Elizabeth, combed the area with renewed determination. They offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to his capture, describing him as armed and dangerous. Sheriff McCaskill detailed Filia's elaborate escape plans, including a tunnel dug from his bedroom to a shed, which had allowed him to evade capture earlier. As the sun rose over Kershaw County, the authorities continued their hunt for Filia, and he was later captured 5 miles away and arrested. He died in prison in 2021. In the end, Elizabeth's bravery had not only saved her life, but had also helped bring a dangerous man to justice. Number 11. Colleen Stan, The Girl in the Box. On a fateful night in May 1977, in Eugene, Oregon, Colleen Stan decided to hitchhike home. At just 20 years old, she was usually cautious, having turned down rides from rowdy groups earlier in the evening. But when a couple with a baby offered her a lift, Colleen saw no cause for concern. Cameron and Janice Hooker appeared ordinary enough. Yet within moments of Colleen entering their car, the facade shattered. Cameron veered off onto a desolate side road, where he soon brandished a knife. Fear immobilized Colleen as Cameron forced her back to their home in Red Bluff, California. Subjected to unspeakable brutality there, she found herself trapped. Cameron presented her with a twisted contract that would bind her to a life of servitude and suffering. For 7 long years, Colleen's existence became a roller coaster of periods of confinement and brief reprieves. Locked in a coffin-like box under the hooker's bed for up to 23 hours a day, she endured the horrors of captivity, including psychological torment and beatings. Cameron's threats of a mysterious syndicate, the Company, loomed large, convincing Colleen that danger awaited not just for her, but for her family too. Despite the occasional outings, chaperoned jogs, and supervised visits to her family, Colleen remained shackled by Cameron's web of lies. The normalization of her captivity, the constant threat of retribution from an unseen enemy, these proved to be near physical restraints. It wasn't until 1984 when Janice Hooker took a pivotal step. Perhaps racked by a guilty conscience or seeking an escape herself, she confided in a pastor, revealing the horrific truth of Colleen's imprisonment. Advised to leave Cameron, Janice spoke a secret message to Colleen, breaking the spell of the Company with a revelation that none of it was real. In a tense exchange at a bus station, Colleen confronted Cameron over a payphone. She declared her intent to leave. Cold and calculating even then, Cameron bid her a biting farewell, as he was losing control. The legal fallout was swift. Janice, despite her complicity, turned informant, exposing Cameron's depravity to law enforcement. The courtroom became a stage where the horrors of Colleen's captivity were laid bare. A master-slave contract, testimony of a life stolen. Cameron Hooker was condemned by a judge as one of the most dangerous psychopaths known and was sentenced to a century behind bars. His imprisonment offered a semblance of justice, but for Colleen Stan, the scars ran deep. Number 10. Jeremiah Denton blinks. The sky over Tan Hoa, Vietnam darkened as Jeremiah Denton piloted his A-6 Intruder on his 12th combat mission in 1965. Suddenly, a violent impact startled him as one of the craft's own Mark 82 bombs exploded upon release. With grim resolve, Denton ejected from the stricken aircraft, only to be quickly seized by Viet Cong soldiers upon landing. His grueling ordeal had just begun. Dragged from a muddy riverbank, Denton was thrust into the nightmarish confines of the infamous Hanoi Hilton and other notorious Vietnamese prisons. For 8 years, from 1965 to 1973, he endured unimaginable suffering. Systematically starved, beaten, and humiliated, Denton was subjected to relentless torture designed to break him both physically and mentally. And the oppression of solitary confinement, which often stretched into months, Denton began to devise a system of communication among his fellow prisoners. Using the sounds of coughs, hacks, scratching, spitting, and throat clearing, they relayed messages, each keyed to letters of the alphabet. This secret network was their lifeline, their resistance against the unending torment. Denton's resilience and leadership were put to the test one harrowing day in 1966. His captors, thinking they had finally broken him, permitted a Japanese television crew to interview him. As he was paraded before the cameras, Denton seized the opportunity. Blinking deliberately under the harsh, blinding lights, he spelled out a single, chilling word in Morse code. Unbeknownst to his captors, Denton's eyes were telling their secrets. His message, broadcast worldwide, confirmed U.S. suspicions about the mistreatment of American POWs. While maintaining a composed demeanor and steadfastly supporting his government in the interview, Denton paid dearly for his silent defiance. Denton's suffering continued, but his spirit remained unbroken. He encouraged his fellow prisoners to resist, pushing them to withstand the pain and give only harmless, inaccurate information if pushed beyond their limits. This defiance became their collective mantra. As negotiations for the 1973 Paris Peace Accords progressed, conditions for the POWs improved slightly. Denton's steadfast will and the worldwide attention his message garnered had not been in vain. On February 12, 1973, Denton was among the first prisoners to be freed. Stepping off the plane at Clark Airfield in the Philippines, he declared, "We are honored to have had the opportunity to serve our country under difficult circumstances. We are profoundly grateful to our Commander-in-Chief and to our nation for this day. God bless America. Denton returned to a hero's welcome, but was haunted by the moral decay he perceived in his homeland after seeing footage of Woodstock and the hippie movement. What he saw as America's moral degradation spurred him to a new battlefront, the U.S. Senate. Elected as the first Republican senator from Alabama in over a century, Denton was a polarizing figure, staunchly defending conservative values and military strength. His tenure was marked by controversy, especially his comments on sensitive issues that drew widespread condemnation. Despite the political tumult, Denton's legacy as a war hero and moral crusader remained intact. His story, immortalized in his memoir When Was in Session, captured the soul of his resilience and dedication. Even after his defeat in the Senate and the profound personal loss of his wife, he continued to advocate for veterans and uphold his vision of American values. Jeremiah Denton passed away at the age of 89. His final plea, God Save America, was true to his steadfast spirit. His story, forever marked by the measured blinks warning his government of, remains a powerful reminder of the human capacity for courage in the face of unimaginable suffering. Number 9. Dutch train siege mirror Morse code. On a bright day in May of 1975, the air brakes of train 747 came to a screeching halt in the Dutch countryside. Passengers felt a sense of foreboding as the South Moluccan hijackers took control, their leader, Max Papalaya, brandishing a rifle and issuing orders. It was the beginning of a 20-day nightmare that would test the endurance and spirit of all who were on board. The first hours were filled with paralyzing fear. The 52 passengers were forced into silence, guarded by figures with submachine guns. The hijackers quickly established control, ordering windows to be covered with newspapers to prevent any outside visibility. The hostages' lives now hung in a precarious balance, dictated by the whims of their captors. Max wasted no time sorting out the passengers, confining them all to a second-class compartment designed for only 54 people. As the hostage situation entered the second week, routines had formed. The government sent in hot meals, and the passengers began to learn the first names and ideals of their captors. These young South Moluccans, displaced and desperate, spoke of their longing for independence and the betrayal they felt by the Dutch government. Despite the growing familiarity, the isolation was crushing. Cut off from their families and the outside world, the hostages' hope dimmed with each passing day. As time wore on, a realization set in among the passengers. Their captors had no intention of harming them. This knowledge offered a silver lining, but it didn't quell the uncertainty of their fate. A similar hostage crisis had occurred not even 2 years prior, in December of 1975. Then, as here, South Moluccans had seized a train, but during that standoff, 3 hostages were killed. They hoped this would not be a repeat incident. The government saw no silver lining. To them, the hostages' lives were in imminent danger, prompting a desperate decision. On June 8, as the hijacking dragged into its 3rd week, a sculptor among the hostages, Bart Vanderstruck, sent a covert message in Morse code using a pocket mirror. "Come and help us get out," he signaled. This message, decoded by the authorities, was a critical turning point. It convinced the government that a military intervention was necessary. The other hostages were unaware of this secret communication and were taken aback when at 4:45 a.m. on June 11th, the early morning silence was shattered by the sound of gunfire. The Dutch Marines launched a swift and decisive assault. Explosions rocked the train as machine guns roared, and chaos ensued. Amid the pandemonium, the hijackers responded violently. In the women's compartment, the wildest of the captors allegedly began firing indiscriminately. Tragically, the lives of 2 of the hostages, Rein van Barsel and 19-year-old Ansha Monsja, were ended in the crossfire. Sheltering amid the chaos, the other passengers realized the end was near. The Marines moved through the compartments, assessing the situation. Max was among the fallen. When the dust settled, the surviving hostages emerged, dazed, relieved, and also sorrowful for the lost. They walked away from the wreckage with a heavy heart and mixed emotions: relief, gratitude, and the profound sadness for those who did not make it. The longest mass kidnapping in modern history had ended, but questions lingered. Could the government have resolved the crisis without bloodshed? Was this the best approach to ending the conflict? Questions that will never be answered. Number 8. The Colombian Army and the Pop Song. The year was 2010, and Colonel Jose Espejo was staring at a grainy video feed. On the screen, kidnapped soldiers were chained inside barbed wire pens, deep in the Colombian jungle, guarded by armed FARC guerrillas. Some had been held for over a decade, their bodies ravaged by a flesh-eating disease spread by insect bites. Espejo, a veteran of 22 years in the Colombian Army, was nearing retirement, yet he couldn't abandon his comrades. He needed a plan to bring them home. Espejo knew exactly who to call: Juan Carlos Ortiz. Ortiz was in Miami, an advertising genius, renowned in Colombia for his anti-drug campaigns. Ortiz had earned a reputation akin to Mad Men's Don Draper, his clever commercials winning accolades, including a prestigious Golden Lion at Cannes. But his success had also drawn threats from the FARC, forcing him and his family to relocate to the United States. When Colonel Espejo explained the situation, Ortiz's mind raced. The task was daunting. Get a message to soldiers held under 24-hour guard in the remote jungle. How could they communicate hope and the promise of rescue without alerting their captors? Ortiz brainstormed, recalling past operations where he had used unconventional methods to send messages to and past the FARC. Skywriting? Aid parcels? No, this required something more covert. Ortiz and Espejo knew that many soldiers had access to radios, a small relief allowed by their captors to stave off the monotony of jungle marches. The idea struck Ortiz like lightning: a song. They could embed a secret message in a popular song, something the soldiers could hear without raising suspicion. Ortiz flew to Bogota and assembled his creative team. They experimented with various ideas before settling on Morse code. If they could hide a message within the song's rhythm, the soldiers might recognize it. The team encoded a message: 19 people rescued. You are next. Don't lose hope. They chose a popular music style and wrote lyrics that subtly referred to captivity and resilience. After weeks of work, they had a song titled Better Days, performed by session artists Natalia Gutierrez and Angelo. Getting the song on the airwaves was the next hurdle. Espejo ensured it played on government-controlled stations in the jungle regions. Former hostages confirmed that radios were a godsend, and they tuned in regularly. The song, with its hidden message, began to echo through the dense jungle, offering the hope that they so desperately needed. The plan worked. Soldiers who heard the song deciphered the Morse code and spread the word. It was a dangerous gamble, but it paid off. In December 2010, the FARC announced the release of several hostages as a humanitarian gesture, among them military and political prisoners. By spring 2012, the last of the military hostages were freed, their long ordeal finally over. Ortiz watched the news of the rescues with tears in his eyes. He had turned his talent for advertising into a tool for liberation, helping to bring his fellow Colombians back from the brink. Better Days had not only become a life-saving melody, but also earned Ortiz another Golden Lion at Cannes, this time a victory unmarred by threats. Colonel Espejo died eventually, but his legacy lives on. He had orchestrated a rescue operation that used the power of music and code to outsmart a ruthless enemy. Ortiz continued his career, but the memory of Better Days remained his proudest achievement. Although this wasn't a secret message sent by hostages, but rather to hostages, It stands as a true testament to the ingenuity and courage of those who refuse to leave anyone behind. Number 7. Missing Girl and the TikTok Distress Signal. As darkness fell, 61-year-old James Herbert Brick drove southbound on I-75, unaware that his plan was on the brink of collapse at the hands of his young captive. Beside him, the underage girl sat in silent desperation, her heart pounding in her chest. Officially, she had been missing for 2 days, torn from her family in Asheville, North Carolina, and driven across state lines. In the passenger seat, she recalled the campaign she had seen on social media, the Signal for Help, started by the Canadian Women's Foundation. It was a simple yet powerful gesture, tucking your thumb into your palm and folding your fingers over it, a discreet cry for help that had gained traction during the COVID-19 lockdowns, offering aid to those trapped in domestic violence. Summoning all her courage, she positioned her hand where passing motorists could see. As the car sped down the highway, she repeated the gesture, hoping that someone would recognize it and take action. Her silent plea did not go unnoticed. A vigilant motorist, who had also seen the sign of distress from a social media post, spotted the hand signal. The motorist followed the vehicle and dialed 911, detailing the car's description and direction. As the car approached an exit, the motorist relayed the information to the dispatcher and continued to tail the car. Soon enough, blue and red lights flashed as police cars converged, boxing in the suspect's vehicle. The officers quickly confirmed the victim's identity. She was the girl reported missing from Asheville. As James Brick was taken into custody, the girl recounted her harrowing journey. She explained how they had traveled through North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Ohio. She revealed how the man's relatives had grown suspicious upon realizing her age, prompting their hurried departure from Ohio. In the aftermath, the story of her rescue spread like wildfire. The girl's brave use of the Signal for Help had both saved her and emphasized the power of social media in providing tools for those in danger. Number 6. Amanda Berry's call to the outside world. For most, it was a quiet, uneventful Monday morning in Cleveland. But for Amanda Berry, it was a day that would bring a decade of nightmares to an end. She stared at the bolted storm door, her pulse quickening. Ariel Castro had forgotten to lock the big inside door. Could this be her chance? Or was it another cruel test? Amanda clutched her daughter's hand tightly. The little girl, born into captivity, had grown to be her sole beacon of hope. Amanda's mind raced with thoughts of the 2 other women trapped upstairs, Gina DeJesus and Michelle Knight. Each day had been an eternity of torment and fear, but today, Amanda felt a surge of determination. She approached the storm door cautiously. The memory of Castro's brutal beatings for previous failed escape attempts loomed large. But as she peered through the screen and saw neighbors outside, a fierce resolve took hold. She screamed, "Help me! I've been kidnapped and missing for 10 years. I'm Amanda Berry." Across the street, Charles Ramsey was enjoying a meal when he heard the desperate cries. He rushed outside and saw Amanda. Without hesitation, he and another neighbor, Angel Cordero, began kicking at the door's bottom panel. With a final powerful thrust, they broke through. Amanda crawled out, pulling her daughter behind her. Ramsey, realizing the gravity of the situation, called 911. "Help me. I've been kidnapped, and I've been missing for 10 years. And I'm here. I'm free now." Amanda's voice trembled with a mixture of relief and urgency. The dispatcher's response was swift, and within minutes, police cars were speeding towards 2207 Seymour Avenue. Guns drawn, they announced themselves as they entered the house. The stench of decay and despair hit them immediately. Moving cautiously through the dimly lit corridors, they called out, hoping that more survivors awaited rescue. From a slightly ajar door, Michelle Knight peeked out, her eyes hollow from years of suffering. When she saw the officers, she rushed into the hallway, her thin frame trembling with disbelief. She clung to them as if they might vanish at any moment. Gina DeJesus emerged next, her face a mix of relief and terror. The officers led them out, each step away from their prison feeling surreal. They were quickly whisked to Metro Health Medical Center, their nightmare finally drawing to an end. The news of their rescue spread like wildfire. Cleveland was electrified by the miraculous escape, and as the details emerged, the horror of their captivity became apparent. Ariel Castro, who had so easily blended into the community, was swiftly arrested at a nearby McDonald's. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Diaries of abuse, rooms designed for, and a litany of crimes that shocked even the most hardened officers. In the days and weeks following, Amanda, Gina, and Michelle began the arduous journey of reclaiming their lives. They had been chained and abused, yet they emerged with unbroken spirits. Castro was charged with kidnapping and aggravated murder, among other crimes. His trial was a formality. The real victory was in the women's survival and their courage. Amanda's call for help, her voice breaking through years of silence, had been the spark that led to their freedom. Castro was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years, a punishment that seemed almost insufficient for his heinous acts. Yet, a month later, he was found hanging in his cell, his cowardly escape from justice contrasted by the bravery of his victims. Number 5. Victim mouths, "Help me." The night of January 26, 2024 was eerily quiet in a northeast Atlanta neighborhood. Inside an apartment on Piedmont Avenue, however, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Around 10 p.m., officers from the Atlanta Police Department arrived at the scene, responding to a tip about a domestic dispute. As they approached the residence, they were met by a woman at the door. Her demeanor was guarded, her eyes wide with unspoken fear. The officers could sense something was terribly wrong. As the officers made their introductions, stating that they'd been called about a disturbance, the woman glanced over her shoulder nervously, then turned back to them, her face tense. She was uncooperative, insisting that everything was fine, but her eyes told a different story. Just as the officers were about to leave, she mouthed the words, "Help me." It was so subtle that they almost missed it. The officers exchanged glances, understanding the gravity of the situation without a word. They backed away from the door, pretending to leave, but they had no intention of abandoning her. The officers quickly called for backup. Within minutes, hostage negotiators and a SWAT team arrived, establishing a perimeter around the apartment. They prepared to resolve the situation without causing harm to the woman or her child. Inside the apartment, the woman clung to her young daughter, trying to stay calm. Her captor, 34-year-old Andre Ross, was pacing the floor. Ross was no stranger to the law. He had multiple warrants for his arrest, including charges for robbery, obstruction of probation, and weapon possession. The negotiator's voice crackled through a loudspeaker, hanging in the air. He pleaded for Ross to come out and not to harm anyone. Ross barked orders at his victim, demanding that she tell the police to leave. But the woman, mustering every ounce of courage, stood her ground silently, holding her daughter close. The standoff continued, the negotiators working tirelessly. They knew they had to tread carefully. One wrong move could end in tragedy. Finally, Ross began to waver. The negotiators had chipped away at his resolve, offering assurances of a peaceful surrender and emphasizing the importance of his daughter's safety. Slowly, he began to see reason. The front door creaked open, and Ross emerged with his hands raised, his expression a mix of defeat and relief. The SWAT team moved in swiftly, taking him into custody without further incident. The ordeal was over. The woman and her daughter were escorted out of the apartment, safe at last, while Andre Ross was taken to Fulton County Jail and charged with false imprisonment, among other offenses. As the officers debriefed, they couldn't help but reflect on the woman's bravery. Her silent plea for help had been the catalyst for their swift response. Number 4. Leah Sharibu sends message home. On February 19, 2018, Boko Haram stormed the government girls' science and technical college in Dapchi, in Nigeria's northern state of Yobe, abducting Leah Sharibu and her classmates. Among the chaos, Leah's unwavering faith set her apart. leading to a harrowing ordeal that would test her courage and resilience. As the 110 schoolgirls were held captive, the anguish of Leah's family grew. Then, one day, a glimmer of hope arrived in the form of a mass release in March of 2018. All schoolgirls, save the 5 that died during the first day of the kidnapping, were released. All except Leah Sharibu. Leah was Christian and had refused to denounce her religion and convert to Islam. In a message from Leah, carried by her released friends, Leah said, "My mother, you should not be disturbed. I know it is not easy missing me, but I want to assure you that I am fine where I am. I am confident that one day I shall see your face again. If not here, then there at the bosom of our Lord Jesus Christ." Upon receiving the message, Leah's mother, Rebecca, collapsed, overwhelmed by a mix of relief and sorrow. Though the words of her daughter were a comfort, they were also a reminder of the cruel reality they faced. Leah's faith had become both her shield and her cross to bear. Aisha, a friend of Leah's, recounted the harrowing details of one failed escape attempt. 3 girls, including Leah, had dared to try to get away, but their attempt ended in betrayal. Those they sought help from turned them back to the Boko Haram camp. In the Sharibu household, the air was thick with a mix of pride and despair. Leah's father, Nathan, also held on to his faith with a fierce determination. "I am very sad, but I am also jubilant too, because my daughter did not denounce Christ," he said. Rebecca found herself on her knees more often than not, praying for her daughter's safety and strength. The community rallied around them, their church issuing a statement on March 23rd, praising Leah's courage, doggedness, and faith. Leah Sharibu remains captive 6 years on. She is now 20 years old. Number 3. ECU students' texts. In the quiet pre-dawn hours of a Friday morning at Greenville's 5 Points Plaza, a 20-year-old unnamed East Carolina University student had just left a late study session with friends. Now eager to retreat to the comfort of her dormitory, she neared a corner where a car rolled to a stop beside her. She hesitated, glanced warily at the 2 men inside, as they asked if she wanted a ride. Instinctively, she declined, stepping back. But before she could retreat, the men lunged forward, their intentions now clear as panic seized her. Desperately, she fumbled for her phone, her fingers tapping out a hurried message to her friend. Just as the text was sent, the men maneuvered her into the car, their grip firm and unyielding. Her mind started to race, willing her friend to act on her distress call. Meanwhile, her friend saw the message and, without a second thought, leapt into her car. Racing through the deserted streets, miraculously, she landed upon the white car and began tailing it. She dialed 911, relaying her friend's location. Officers were dispatched. It was now a race against time. Finally, the white car slowed, turning into the parking lot of the Camelot Inn. Her friend pulled up behind it, and with unyielding strength, confronted the 2 men as they exited the vehicle, demanding they release the student. Police arrived swiftly, their sirens blaring. Her friend watched with relief as officers secured the men, and the victim emerged shaken but unharmed from the backseat of the car. Incredibly, the men were thwarted thanks to a quick text and an even quicker response from a friend. Number 2. John Pryor's coded messages. In a quaint English town in a world at war, Sub-Lieutenant John Pryor's letters arrived like clockwork. Addressed to his father, their contents seemed mundane, gardening tips and snippets of daily life. But they concealed a daring defiance against the iron grip of Nazi captivity. It was May 19, 1940, when John Pryor, a young officer evacuated from Dunkirk, found himself a prisoner at Marlaug und Millag Nord, near Bremen. Despite his desperate situation, he hoped that his letters showed his resilience against tyranny. Carefully composed under the watchful eyes of his captors, he wrote hidden messages amongst ordinary words. A gardening column, detailing the camp's meager vegetable patch, spoke in veiled terms of British resolve. Phrases were meticulously chosen, with every fourth or fifth word a cryptic code to evade detection, conveying intelligence vital to the war effort. Britain's MI9 agents deciphered the concealed messages within, urgent requests for supplies and intelligence on German activities, before forwarding the sanitized versions to Pryor's family in Cornwall. Years passed, the war ebbed and flowed, yet John's spirit remained unbroken. His letters were more than familial updates. Unbeknownst to his captors, he conspired through ink and paper. Decades later, a team of academic scholars unraveled the legacy of John's hidden messages. Led by his son, Stephen Pryor, these historians and mathematicians pieced together the code that had eluded even some of the brightest minds of their time. A blend of wit and desperation, the code revealed secrets of submarine sinkings, camp logistics, and covert requests for aid. The discovery illuminated not just the bravery of one man, but the collective courage of thousands whose sacrifices lay buried in the trenches of history. In 2010, aged 91, John Pryor passed away, leaving behind a legacy in coded words that fulfilled its wartime mission. Number 1. James Foley's secret letter. In a dimly lit cell in Iraq, captivity had draped heavy curtains over James Foley's days. In the darkness, his thoughts drifted towards the light, his family. In a letter dictated to a fellow captive, a Danish photojournalist, he spoke of his sister's upcoming wedding, the anticipation of seeing his grandmother dance again. He remembered going to the mall with his father, bicycle rides with his mother. His letter home was committed to memory and later passed on to his family. In it, Foley painted a portrait of resilience amidst adversity. 18 souls shared his confinement, their camaraderie the only solace here. They fashioned games from scraps, creating tournaments of wit and strategy to defy the monotony that threatened to engulf them. Even in the depths of captivity, Foley's thoughts reached beyond the prison walls. His letter reached across oceans and continents to touch the hearts of those who prayed for his safe return. "I know you are thinking of me and praying for me," he wrote in spoken word. "I feel you all especially when I pray." His words unveiled the cruelty of his captors, contrasted against the indomitable strength of his spirit. Addressing his siblings individually, he spoke words of admiration and encouragement to them, his hopes for the future undaunted. Foley's secret message spoke of love, courage, and the unyielding bond of family. As the world recoiled in horror at the video of his public execution in August of 2014, Foley's letter lived on through his freed cohort's memory.